After the release of my first podcast in the series, A Case for Atheism, episode 1, I received quite a bit of pushback, albeit from a few individuals, but they engaged quite a bit, for which I am very grateful. After all, I didn't release the podcast in hopes that everyone agrees with me. So if you guys are listening, I really respect and appreciate your engagement. I noticed, without surprise, I might add, that the individuals that engaged in defense of God all identify as Christians. So for this podcast, I'll not be addressing the thousands of other gods that were worshipped throughout history, but will be primarily be focusing on the Judeo-Christian God, but also not really, because we'll be talking about space, guys, which is very exciting. I love this stuff. So interestingly, the most engaging arguments were made in regards to the vastness of the universe, and this is preferable because I have no interest really in debating whether an 80-year-old man parted the Red Sea with a wooden stick. Through the power of and the will of God. It's funny that this all-powerful God gave Moses this specific ability and didn't deem some other form of intervention preferable. Giving everyone those powers would have been pretty sweet. Funny, it's almost as if, it would, make a really good scene in a fictional book or a main plot even. I intended on reading and rebutting an article written by one of the commentators, calls himself the philosophical theist, on why the vastness of the universe points to atheism only superficially, in reply to Emily Thomas, which is relevant to one of the arguments I made in my previous podcast. One of the main arguments, I started out asking, why is there something rather than nothing? Now, the philosophical theist's argument was initially written in response to another article written by Emily Thomas, the assistant professor of philosophy at Durham University, quote, "Does the size of the universe prove God doesn't exist?" unquote. I will not read these articles out to you as I intended, but I will link the articles below, so have a look at those. So Durham's main point, I think, is the idea that the universe is so large and chaotic that it very much appears that it was not intended and designed, in quotes, specifically for human life. Therefore, we can conclude that the likelihood of it being intelligently designed by God for human beings specifically seems more than unlikely. Or I'll go even further and say designed by God for life indiscriminately, so even other life in the universe, which I have no reason to believe does not exist. These are very interesting philosophical questions, but they sadly do not touch on the main core ideas that religion advocates, mainly eternal life after death, or rather eternal glory or eternal suffering through disobedience in rejecting inconsistency, basically. And yeah, but I guess God works in mysterious ways and stuff. The vastness of the universe is incomprehensible to the human mind. The age of the universe is incomprehensible, and yes, the one is not mutually exclusive to the other, i.e. bigger means older. The speed of light is 300 million meters per second, or 300,000 kilometers per second. Are you able to comprehend that speed? No, neither am I. Are you able to comprehend the distance of 300 million meters per second over the course of 1 year? No, neither can I. Are you able to comprehend that distance over the span of 13.7 billion years? Of course not. Our brains have developed in order to survive on a speck of dust in cosmic space we call Earth. The very young Earth that will be devoured by the sun in a few billion years. If you thought that the speed of light was fast, then try to wrap your head around this. The expansion of the universe is speeding up, not slowing down. Galaxies will start to move away from each other faster than the speed of light, which will eventually leave astronomers with the same view of the universe we had not even a few hundred years ago. a planet orbiting the sun in a single galaxy, those future astronomers will not be aware of the other hundreds of billions of galaxies. I'm trying to say that we are living in a very special time here, and we are able to perceive these phenomena, but it's still not evidence for God. And by other astronomers, I obviously don't mean humans, because we won't be alive when that point comes. And the other astronomers on other far-reaching corners of the galaxy, or maybe not even that far-reaching. Anyway, yeah, that's fun to think about. Now, is this a case for or against God? This is the question. Is the vastness of the cosmos affirming or denying God? The leap to God is perhaps a very good mechanism in avoiding nihilism, I would agree, but the avoidance of nihilism is not an argument for the existence of God. Maybe an argument for why religion is good, but religion can then just be interpreted as a sort of maybe a placebo in a mental way to fight that nihilism, without there actually being an actual God that exists. Philosophical theist says, quote, "First, the claim that the size of our bodies relative to the size of the universe implies that we are insignificant. I think such a view would only make sense on a purely materialistic understanding of human beings. If we were merely brute animals, I would grant that Emily would have a point, but why think we are just brute animals? Is this what makes us great?" Unquote. Well, yes, we appear to be insignificant when we try and comprehend the vastness of the universe. There's no other logical way to view it. Does that mean that our lives are meaningless? No. It is an argument against. Is it an argument against atheism? I would argue that it is a weak attempt. Atheists, or rather intellectual proponents of atheism, would argue that that makes life on Earth so much more spectacular and special, not rendering us brute animals. Is God required there? No. Our insignificance on the scale of the universe is not an attack on our dignity. It renders our existence even more significant. Does that mean God did it? Well, no. You simply do not need God to explain why we sit here on this beautiful rock, able to try and comprehend these things and see the beauty in nature and patterns and all of this. It is the function of our vastly superior brains to all the other animals on the planet. We have evolved to recognize patterns and basically use those patterns to our advantage via hunting technology and so on, telescopes, looking at the universe, and at least making a humble attempt at figuring it out. You don't need God for that. I think I see what the problem is here. The concept of such a vast universe and the rejection of God is supposed to suggest that atheists see life as meaningless and without purpose. That without God, life is a nihilistic nightmare. This is the opposite of the truth, at least for me. Of most of prominent atheists, including myself. I'm sorry. Who is not a prominent atheist. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. See is an amazing, beautiful miracle of nature. I'm able to humbly contemplate my sheer luck at being able to look up into the vastness of space and stand in awe. One can stand in awe of nature without standing before a cruel, petty, jealous God. This is where we can start having a more scientific inquiry into the nature of reality, and we will find many answers going forward without even having the idea of a divine creator part of the picture. So these scientific discoveries take place without even thinking of God, just following the evidence. So fine and dandy, this is now philosophy, and science. It still does not answer the most basic questions atheists have brought to theists. In this case, Christians. Did a man die and raise from the dead after 3 days, after the process of decomposition has started to take effect? You pick and choose scriptures that affirm your belief, but disregard those that make you look like a fool. Do you believe everything in Genesis, or only that which will save you from looking mentally ill? This is what I find most fascinating with intellectual theists. They are trying their best to cram God into the last remaining spaces left that are labeled "we don't know" and attributing those spaces with the answer God. We are here, we are alive, and we are able to question. Life is so very unlikely that the universe must have a creator. That's fine. But believing in a passive creator that initiated the great expansion and its rules makes no difference to me. It's when that creator enters my house and demands of me actions that would or that could or could not dictate the eternity of my soul. Did a bad? Burn in hell forever. Forgive me for continuously being skeptical towards your God, who chose to reveal himself to these people in the desert a few hundred years ago. If I'm wrong, oh God, then reveal yourself to me, or have I missed your sweet spot, incomprehensible miracles by 20 centuries? I obviously can't touch on all of these things. These podcasts can go into hours and hours and hours, but I think I'll leave it there. I try to boil it down. Hopefully I hit some of the points. I know I didn't hit all of them. I'll do this again because I enjoy it. I think I'll leave episode 2 at that. So thank you for listening.